thing was, even though it took like 8 years to lose the fat, I reversed the diabetes within months. Within about 3 months, my blood sugars had stabilized enough. I was able to get off my diabetic medicines, and I was able to get off the blood pressure meds and the meds for acid reflux. I was off all the meds within a few months, and I had a normal A1C within a year. And I remember my doctor saying, "How did you do this?" I said, "Well, no thanks to you." No, I says, "Well, I quit eating junk and I quit eating all the time," is what I said. Quit eating junk, quit eating all the time. He says, "Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Well, just keep doing what you're doing." And so why? I never had a medical professional tell me anything other than eat less, move more, count calories, and take these pills or this shot.
Welcome to the Healing with the Diamonds podcast. We are Larry and Kaylin Diamond, here to share the insights and practical wisdom of our journeys using ancestral wisdom to heal as a family. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Before making any lifestyle changes, consult your medical team. This is not medical advice. With that being said, let's start this episode. Welcome. Hello, everyone. I am Larry Diamond of Healing with the Diamonds, along with Kaylin Diamond. We bring ancestral wisdom and becoming CEO of our own health to individuals and families just like yours. And today I have such a pleasure with two of my teachers and friends and just wonderful souls that I met along the healing journey. At one point, we were all at the fasting method. So Cameron Mattice, and there is an entire podcast with Cameron. I love the podcast so much. And we do talk about issues of healing and men's healing. And then we also have John Clary, and both of them really took their health into their own hands and did something that I call learn from everyone, follow no one. What Bruce Lee said, research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and make it your own. And someday, if there's an audience demand, I'll do a whole podcast of Bruce Lee quotes, because they're just, and what's amazing about the quotes is sometimes I understand a new layer of the quote like years later. So this is going to be a fun podcast. And I had a provisional title called Men's Healing Beyond the Gym and Diet. So we're just going to have a fun time about healing in general, and maybe some of our experiences as men healing and some of our male clients. But I'll go third. So I would like our audience to get, to get to know you guys better. And you both have amazing, just your origin stories alone would be worthwhile for any human on the planet, male or female, individual or family wanting to heal. But let's start there. And I was a teacher, so we'll see if this works. Do I have any volunteers who wants to tell their origin story first?
It's you or I, John.
Sure, I'll do it. I'll do it. Well, first I want to say I'm really, well, a little nervous, but I'm very glad to be here with you, Larry and Cameron. And I just reached out to Larry, maybe 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. And it's the first time we talked in about a year and a half. I've known Larry pretty close to 10 years, and I have visited him in Texas, and I know his wife and his daughter. So I feel like we have quite a history. But for the past year and a half, I've just been enjoying my retirement and traveling nonstop. And very recently, I decided I wanted to get back involved again. And that's why I reached out to Larry. I've connected with some people from Metabolic Mind and the Metabolic Collective recently, and have joined up there. And one of the things I needed to do was kind of like write my story. So since you asked, a lot of it's in my brain. Now, I can ramble on for a long time, as you know. So feel free to pause me. But so in my story, I just talked about how, I was a fat kid. We moved around all the time. I had a lot of traumas in my childhood. I won't get into all that now, but by the time I got to high school, I was what they used to call morbidly obese, which now they call it type 3 or class 3 obesity.
Hmm.
And, I tried to live my life as normally as I could, what I knew as normal. Went to college, kept gaining weight. Never really tried to do anything about my weight. Just that's who I was. I'd always been fat, and that was my identity. I was fat, and nobody ever let me forget it. I was always the biggest person in the room. Friends, family, schoolmates, total strangers would mock me, make fun of me, hit me, spit at me just because I was fat. And it wasn't something I could hide either. So by the time I got into my late 30s, I was married, 2 kids. I needed to do something. I'd tried Overeaters Anonymous, 12 steps. I'd tried various diets, Nutrisystem, all kinds of things. Everything worked for a while until it didn't. I ended up having the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, the full one where I've got like a foot-long scar. And I lost some weight from that pretty quickly, and then started getting some really terrible side effects, bleeding ulcers. I had to have multiple follow-up surgeries. So in the end, I ended up getting chopped up guts that didn't help me lose any weight. Living my life. Oh, then I became diabetic. Went to the doctor. Doctor said, well, you're type 2 diabetic and your blood pressure's high too. And I was so ashamed of the diabetes. I just told my wife that, well, my glucose was on the high side. So I didn't want to use the D word. And time went on with just progressive. In addition to the high blood pressure, I had acid reflux and hyperlipidemia. Of course, depression. I had a CPAP for sleep apnea. I had to sleep with a machine on my face at night.
Yeah.
And finally, what really changed things is my daughter got to be about 12 or 13 and was pretty heavy herself. And she started looking for ways that she could make changes. And she just pretty much started eating real food, real whole food. We planted a garden, started getting away from the snack foods, the cakes, cookies, breads, pasta, all those things. And I tried to follow along too. And I read a lot of books. I remember David Kessler, The End of Overeating, the original Gary Taubes book, so many books. And then started listening to podcasts, joining support groups, websites. And I switched to a real food model myself, mostly like paleo, Whole30, that kind of thing. And I got some results. I was feeling better, but I was still hungry all the time. And it wasn't working that well after a little while. And I started learning about carbohydrate intolerance and insulin resistance and realizing, oh, yeah, I'm eating real whole food, but I'm diabetic. I shouldn't be eating bananas and stuff like that too, just jacking
Got
up my
it.
blood sugar even more. And so I learned about keto and carnivore. And carnivore turned out to be my way of eating. That's pretty much how I've been eating for the last 10 years now. And when I made those changes, the weight started coming off. I learned about insulin resistance through the Obesity Code, book by Dr. Jason Fung. And that was my real awakening, my real aha moment. And I read the book in one day. As a matter of fact, it was April 20th, 2016. And I just know that because it's on my Amazon list. And anyway, um, and I cried. I read,
Anniversary.
thank you. I cried when I read it because understanding how the body works, how the metabolism works, understanding how insulin works, it's like, no wonder. And I felt like it's not my fault. I mean, yeah, I ate the food, but I was pretty much doing what I was following the food pyramid. I was eating all the, healthy whole grains and the fruit and all that stuff. And I got some low hanging fruit because of switching to the healthy whole grains and the fruit instead of the fruit snacks and the Cheetos and things like that. But learning that I needed to get my carbs under about 20 grams a day to get into ketosis and what ketosis was. And fasting? What an idea. Fasting? You mean like intentionally going out without food? Like all day? 2 days? A week? Wow. But hey, I was excited and I jumped in. And so condense this a little bit. Over those 8 years from 2016 until what was it 2024, when I retired, I lost 251 pounds. I got down to 173, and that was July of 24. Thing was, even though it took like 8 years to lose the fat, I reversed the diabetes within months. Within about 3 months, my blood sugars had stabilized enough. I was able to get off my diabetic medicines, and I was able to get off the blood pressure meds and the meds for acid reflux. I was off all the meds within a few months, and I had a normal A1C within a year. And I remember my doctor saying, "How did you do this?" I said, "Well, no thanks to you." But no, I says, "Well, I quit eating junk and I quit eating all the time," is what I said. Quit eating junk, quit eating all the time. He says, "Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Well, just keep doing what you're doing." And so why I never had a medical professional tell me anything other than eat less, move more, count calories, and take these pills or this shot. So that's why I'm getting involved again with advocacy. And I may go back to coaching at some point, but the advocacy is like, people need to know about this. It changes people's lives. It certainly changed mine. And I think of all of us here. Think of all the people that we have been in contact with. In my 8 years of doing support groups and health education and coaching and the webinars and the
Yeah.
support groups and the in-person events and the small group coaching and the individual coaching, we've reached thousands of people.
Thousands.
And
Yeah.
so many of them were like, I had no idea. I've never been able to lose weight or get my blood sugar down. I've never been able to not be hungry all the time. It's like my life has changed. That's almost the easy part. The hard part is sustaining it, because I've had my struggles. I've had periods where I had some regain because maybe I had some extraordinary stress or something like that, and did some emotional eating, a little bit of carb creep. An ounce of nuts, yeah, that's about an ounce, just slippery slope, things like that. But unlike a diet, unlike Nutrisystem or whatever other eat less, move more model you might think of, this lets you be satisfied because you're eating real food that works for your body, and you don't have to follow this plan from this person or this plan or that plan. You can have your own plan, the one that works for you, and that's certainly what I do. So with that, I think I guess I'm not too shy, am I?
No, I was going to say you are a natural storyteller. That was amazing. And because we're three dudes, Cameron, how are you going to top that? No, I'm just, John, wow. Wow. Just wow. And, it's interesting that the whole real food was a start, but then you discovered that because you were carbohydrate intolerant, that for you, John's N equals one, it was a lower carb or even keto version of whole real food. That was really what you needed to bring your insulin down enough, reverse that insulin resistance so you could start burning your own body fat. And at least for me and Kaylin, it was hilarious. Ended up doing mostly 1 and 2 meal days, so 24-hour, 18-hour fast, some longer fast. But I didn't even know the word fasting. So I called it not eating because I'm not hungry. Now, how's that for honestly? Yeah, I was doing, intermittent. I didn't know. It was so organic and flowing. And you also brought up what I felt for my years of coaching, which are continuing. So 7, 8 years of coaching at this point, that every body, in every family, but everyone deserves to know how their bodies work. They deserve to have accurate information. And that's my main drive, because if somebody decides to go low carb intermittent fasting, crush the real food, learn to cook, that's up to them. Actually, no one has to heal or be healthy, but everyone should have the accurate wisdom. And I also challenge my clients, like, you've spent 40, 50, 70 years not eating real food and eating frequently. Why not give it your best shot for 3 months, consistent, like prioritize it, feel life as somebody who's fat adapted and who eats real food, and you can always go back. That's what I tell all my
Mhm.
clients. The soda pop, the, the the Cheetos, the artificial coloring, all that stuff's going to be there. It's going to be there. So why not as an experiment see if it's worth it? So just any thoughts from you, Cameron, on John's story, and then we can get to yours. But thank you so much for being honest. And I'm sorry for the ignorance of other people. Sorry that you had that, John. It's made you a better human. That sounds weird. You didn't become one of those people. Look at that smile. It deepened your authenticity of soul. So that's what I'm happy for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you going first. Not, I didn't mean to put you on the spot as pressure to go first, but thank you for graciously going first and sharing your story with such honesty and vulnerability. Just to what Larry's saying too, those moments of you as a young boy receiving the feedback that you did from your environment. It's it seems like it's becoming a source of strength for you now, in that it's a big part of that driving force that why you want to advocate in the ways that you are, and that's such a beautiful thing. A lot of my work for myself, and even as I support clients, is like these parts of ourselves in the past. There's real temptation to just kind of brush them under the rug, and it's like, this is the past. I'm going to leave it in the past. But I think when that's done, it can the shadow can loom over us and become a burden. And so in a way, it's like
Mm.
bringing the past into the present in a way that honors and respects what you had gone through, and the wisdom that you carry in through those moments. So yeah, again, I just appreciate you, John, for sharing your story with such clarity and vulnerability, and shows people some of the different aspects of their well-being that they can explore too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess I'll begin to elaborate on myself and how I have arrived here as well. A bit of a different angle or different story. And I do feel there's like universal parts as well. So I'd love to see how our stories will weave together as the conversation
Thank
goes on. I I had a very athletic upbringing and playing baseball, eventually going on to play at the collegiate level, having a scholarship in Louisiana, playing at the national level and for Team Canada briefly. Um, and so a lot of my health behaviors were developed to meet my needs as an athlete. And I think the biggest challenge that I had also experienced at that time, which Larry, we were talking about earlier, was my childhood experience with cancer at the age of 13. And that was one of those moments where I had this life near death experience essentially. I went through 6 months of chemo and radiation therapy, and like I was saying, leaving the past in the past, I was ready to move on and just pretend that that never happened. And so I jumped back into my athletic career with success. I eventually competed in bodybuilding with success as well. And also
you.
did track and field at York University, where I was doing my kinesiology degree. Yeah. And so high level performer. And then about 10 years from my cancer experience, I started to have symptoms of that actually reflected very similarly to the cancer experience: coughing, wheezing, sleepless nights. So, of course, there's concern that there was a relapse, that I had cancer again. But upon further testing, I was clear. And so it kind of initiated this deep dive and exploration into what's going on with my health and my body. And I came to recognize that I had some exposure to mold. I was living in a basement and became, yeah, by mycotoxins. And so because of that, I was also very sensitive to carbohydrates. It seemed like eating sugars and starches were feeding the molds. And so I had brain fog, headaches, different joint pains because of this. Part of what triggered that event was I actually experimented with a ketogenic diet with the awareness of like cancer prevention. And then when I went off of keto back into introducing carbs, that's what actually exacerbated all my symptoms. Um,
Mm.
the last 10 years, I've been exploring my health and this experience, and yeah, there's still a lot that I'm learning. I wouldn't say I have a clean bill of health. I'm not back to that kind of very physical, athletic type person that I was. I'm adopting much more gentle, yeah, slow types of activity, and still kind of exploring some nuance with my diet, because part of me doesn't want to only eat meat and only eat ketogenically. I want some more flexibility and variety, and so there's a lot of different aspects of health that I've been exploring to find more freedom, I guess you could say. And it's not all behind me, but it's been a journey, and while there's been a lot of frustration and sadness and grief that comes through, there's also a lot of gratitude and appreciation because the that initial cancer experience really flipped my world upside down, but now it's like starting to allow me to have such an enriched, meaningful life where I can support others in their health and well-being and get to impart some of the wisdom, some of my lived experience with others in a way that helps them feel better in themselves too.
I love that. John, were you aware of Cameron's cancer story? I wasn't when we started recording, and I urge people to go back and listen to our Cameron podcast.
Only bare bones about it years ago when we first met. And so no, it's and what struck me is it's like the whole food approach and changing what and when you eat isn't just for losing weight, isn't just for type 2 diabetes. It's also for mental health. It's also for metabolic health. It's cancer. It's just eating real food and not all the time. Yeah, that's just it. It's so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Right.
Not
But
easy, but
but you got to find the right combination for you.
and also that right combination can change as we change. That's why, I don't get in the diet wars, and you've been more carnivore, and I say this because it's truthfully, I'm like, am I carnivore or vegetarian? Is it Tuesday or Thursday? I might have only meat on a Tuesday and only veg on a Thursday, and we don't have to pick a forever way of eating. I was, again, doing it flowingly, not knowingly. I like that. I did it flowingly, not knowingly. I was very low carb to keto just almost instinctively as I was becoming fat adapted. And then part of my story, and kind of incorporated this with other people, carb cycling, I just discovered at the appropriate time. Cameron, you said something about weaving our stories together. So I want to tell a part of my story. My origin story for low carb, paleo, healthy fat, all that is 2013. But I actually have an additional story that started in 1993, and I don't know if you guys are aware of it. So, and speaking about not keeping it in the past, so you guys might know that I love learning and teaching. I had my first teaching job actually at seventh grade. I was making $10 an hour back then. That might have been my highest wage ever, tutoring a fifth grader and a fourth grader in seventh grade. So I've just loved teaching, and I just read and read and read and everything you can imagine, mostly fiction, ironically, again, storytelling, but it was always good fiction, everything from comic books to Dickens to Dostoevsky. Long story short, I loved universities. And my particular upbringing, I only had two caregivers, an uncle who I saw about once a week, and we became best friends. But my mom, from about my fourth grade on, just completely broke down. Didn't know exactly why. So we were on public assistance, and she had been, my God, before I was born, she was on electroshock. She became part of the system, and she was taking, and no medical advice here, she was taking what I now know as toxic amounts of something called lithium carbonate, and had been diagnosed as quote unquote bipolar. So she was not really functioning. I kept doing great at school, winning awards. I actually wasn't a clumsy academic. I was really good at sports to you, Cameron. But I would sometimes, my mom would come to school and they'd go, "You're Larry's mom?" And that made me feel horrible, awful. But I just loved learning so much. So I won every award that you could, got in to Berkeley, ended up for various reasons graduating from UCLA, got recruited for a master's. Then in the master's, my second year in master's, wanted to do a PhD and my studies were evolving. So was highly recruited, but I came across a book, I'll keep trying, called Touched with Fire by Kay Jameson. So up till that time, no matter how many awards I got, I was deeply in the genetic model. So I want to be very compassionate for, it runs in our family. So I felt it didn't matter how well I did. Literally, I would wake up. Is this the day that I break down? Is this the day that quote unquote manic depression? Like I felt like I was a ticking time bomb. And so for I don't even know how I found this book, but it was basically that the artistic temperament, and I read so many poets and romantics. This person's thesis was that manic depression is um like overlaps with the artistic soul. So now all of a sudden I could be proud that I was quote unquote manic depressive, even though I never had a manic episode in my life. It seems so crazy to me now. So I actually went into the university medical whatever, and I asked for lithium carbonate. This was in the spring of the year. And then I started my PhD in the fall. And I was a bit over 200 pounds. I just came across an article, again, no medical advice, but a lot of things for manic depression. It's really kind of sickly, fascinating, but they dampen the entire system. So I get to this PhD. Imagine Cameron like getting on Team Canada or playing for the Blue Jays. Like I had to work my way through undergrad and masters. I had a 4-year fully funded, like everything I had worked for. It would be the equivalent of somebody reaching the NBA or NFL. That was, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, it was building up in my system. But ironically, you mentioned mold in a co-op by a river. So now I'm wondering, but I started not being able to think or function. And by about January, for 9 months, I was 350 pounds. And you would think that it would be obvious. Hey, maybe it's this thing, but I started to panic. And like I could read as far back as anyone could remember. Like my mom and uncle said, I don't know, about 3 or 4, you were reading entire books. We don't know how. And I couldn't read. And I started to panic and I couldn't think. And it should have been obvious. I lost a PhD opportunity because I couldn't function. Thankfully, my uncle took me in, and the next 2 years are a complete blur. And again, no medical advice, but about 2 years in, and I was trying like this Paxil, this Wellbreathe, and I was just panicking. And I was literally medicalizing my soul, which is, Cameron, you know me, it's about as anti Larry as you can get. I don't know. And then one day I was walking and I remember telling the universe, and this was just for me, no one else. I said, I'd rather die than ever take a drug again. And whatever I was on in that point, I stopped cold turkey. And then I remember, like, even the next day, just feeling something shifted, became a high school science teacher, reapplied for a PhD, got into University of Texas, met Kaylin, voluntarily didn't get the PhD this time. But that, at least for me, I don't want to use, well, it was traumatic for me to get to the pinnacle and just have it all lost. And then who was I? I was no longer a scholar. I could literally feel teaching students and doing these incredible research projects. And I had worked on that gladly. It didn't feel like work. I was just really good. And then instead of being in that fully funded PhD program, I was 350 pounds. I worked jobs that I can't even remember those 2 years. And the silver lining is in 2013, when I found myself with sleep apnea, severe IBS, so much pain, I had that background in 1993 and I used the same metric. I'd rather die than take a drug or personally see a doctor for this. So the silver lining is that somehow, hopefully, maybe if people are willing to say that sadness and an artistic temperament and deep feelings are not wrong and maybe should not be medicated, that part of my story is worth it to anyone. So yeah, I didn't know if you guys knew that pre Larry journey healing. I feel like I've been given a second chance, and you know, being in such a sacred marriage with Kaylin, and you guys know how delightful she is. And I was telling her just today, she did all the work, but there's nothing I can do on Gaia in this lifetime that's more significant. And I helped her realize all the awesomeness and healing inside. So anything else I do is like a bonus. So yeah, I wanted to thank you, Cameron, for how our story interacts. So don't know if you guys knew that part of my story, but yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Larry. Yeah, I haven't heard that. I heard snippets of it in the past as well. I yeah, we're really grateful to hear you elaborate on that now, and it feels like a full circle moment as well of like a certainly it's clear the passion you have for learning and for teaching. It's amazing that you bring that with yourself to your clients as well. And I think one of the fascinating parts of it for me is kind of like back to your point with the intro and Bruce Lee quote, like receiving what's useful and rejecting the rest is like I see you carrying that part of your story of teaching other people how to be that like citizen scientist or that
Mm,
like treat it as a N=1 experiment of learning through their own embodied experience and
mm.
learning as to what their body needs. And so being a compassionate guide of, hey, I tried this thing, it was helpful, maybe you can try, kind of, so to speak. So yeah, it really just feels like a full circle experience for you.
Thank you. So going back to, I wonder, I have so many I could share, but focusing on men's health and the male clients we've each had, are there some commonalities, or to Cameron's point, everyone is N=1? But until we're ready, we do accept a lot of societal defining roles, and we can get pigeonholed into males are this and men do that and rah 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 and women do, and it's all we're all combinations of
We have these
feminine.
narrowly defined roles, and we're like indoctrinated from the time we're toddlers of how we're supposed to be. No, you don't play with a doll, you play with a truck. And no, you do this and not that, and you learn, at least I feel, I learned how to live life from like television. It's like, oh, well, that's how it's supposed to be. It's kind of like the Brady Bunch, or is it like the Beverly Hillbillies? I'm not sure which.
And it's funny you mentioned that, John and Cameron. I think you'll like this. This is about the seventh time this has come up in like the last 3 or 4 days. Are we letting the story write us, or are we writing our story? I'm just blown away by that phrase. Society wants to write our story for us. But what I think, I'm going to just go this, everyone who truly heals starts writing their own story. Maybe I'll write a book on that. But yeah, so what I was getting at, John, is maybe we can each give a couple of success stories from male clients. And when I'm thinking about it, I did help them rewrite their stories on how to heal. They were, they had all the will, if we want to use willpower, all the desire to heal, but they were living in a story that was not helping them heal. So maybe that's what a guide is. We help people to become more active, creative artists of their healing journey. Cameron, I know that would resonate with you for sure, but do we want to give maybe a couple of examples of male clients that are on this particular day popping into our heads, or maybe one,
Well, I
and we
remember
can
I had almost like a couple of predominant archetypes of my male
yes,
clients, and a lot of some of them were like everything was great until middle age. You know, maybe they played sports in high school, college, whatever. If life comes along, you know, maybe you got married, maybe you had kids, whatever the situation was, and the weight, all of a sudden you're fat, all of a sudden you're diabetic, you know, whatever metabolic challenges you have, and your doc says, here, follow this food plan, follow this my plate or my food, or get a personal trainer, whatever, and then it might work for a little while, but that's not going to fix the problem. So it's the guys who never really tried to lose weight before, don't really know how to do it, and in a way they were almost easy to deal with because they were open to new ideas and they never really tried anything before. And then there were the people that kind of like me, had tried everything. Every Monday is a new diet, and you're always failing, and I think that's one of those things that subconsciously follows you. That I'm going to fail at this too. I've
learned
failed every
helplessness.
single time I've ever tried to lose weight, and that's how a lot of people, men and women, would come to us for help. The real problem is the sticking with it, the maintenance, because it's like I had that too. It's like, oh, so this is what I need to do. I don't need to count the calories. I don't need to eat every 3 hours. Don't need to get my healthy whole grains. And wow, and this will happen to me too. After not very long, it's like, wow, I feel so much better because I wasn't flooding my
Yes.
brain with glucose and my body with glucose and full of inflammation. But then it's like, man, I'm really upset about this, or this happened, or look, Sally brought in a big box of donuts. Let's blame Sally, or whatever it is. It's like, well, just have a little, and it just slippery slope. Like I talked about nuts earlier. There's a time where, like, if I was eating nuts, which aren't carnivore, I would measure them. And in fact, I've still got my little dish that I would measure them in. But then after a while, it's like, I'll just grab a handful. And then before you know it, I'd be, have the bag in my lap in front of the TV, eating nuts by the handful. Yeah, maybe they would fit in with the food plan, but that wasn't helping. So I think that's a roundabout way of saying that it's the ongoing, the maintenance piece that seems to be the hardest for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I relate to in being someone that's tried everything and still not necessarily getting the results that I wanted as well. And it's part of why when I work with clients, I start at a different place, and it's really just kind of like we're doing here, very conversational, really just like
Mm.
creating a space where someone can really share what they're feeling, what is true for them in that moment, and guiding from there. And I believe that approaching the work in this way has supported me in supporting the individuals I work with to create a more sustainable path, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like John's saying is really one of the most challenging parts of this is like, yeah, you can adopt these health behaviors, but then actually adhering to it for a longer period of time, like you got all these influences in life. How do you navigate that, right? So I've experienced and witnessed so many health professionals advise people to, you got to eat this diet or exercise or do this meditation practice. Well, it's like, and then people try with some success. They have all these like new behaviors, but then they don't stick and it all falls apart because often what I've found is that there's all these layers of stress and
Mm.
like pressure. I so admired John getting fired up here about like how society indoctrinates us into this particular role. And it's like, well, someone else has imposed their beliefs on us, and this is our lane, this is how we have to behave. And we might try it for a period of time, but what if that's actually like, what if we actually remove ourselves from that narrative and it's like ask ourselves a question like, what's true for me, right? Like, and then that pressure gets alleviated and we have more freedom. And um yeah, the behaviors of like food and exercise, they can become more accessible and sustainable when it's coming from a more rightful, true place within our heart, I would say. And I guess to bring a little bit more clarity into what I'm saying, because I think a little bit what I'm saying is more abstract right now. Myself as I identified so much as this athlete,
Mm.
fit, healthy guy. And a lot of it had to do with performing. Kind of like you're saying, Larry, that like macho vibrato, like that, what we were taught to be men.
And I identified as an academic, all the awards. And then with the drug, I couldn't access my abilities anymore. So on the academic level, wow, thank you. That's part of my healing. Like it was my identity for so long. And wow. Yeah. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I love that. It's amazing that you can have this awareness come to life, and yeah, it's inspiring that we can share this space to show other people too what healing truly is and looks like. I guess again back to the point of like when my body started to push back and said, "No, you're not doing those very physical things anymore." It was like, well, there goes my identity. I don't know who I am.
Yes.
I had to start to have more of an internal conversation about, well, what is accessible and available for me and what actually like, what am I excited to do as well? Like what's true for me in my more emotional self? What do I really resonate with? And so there's been a lot of discovery from there. And I feel like navigating from that place of instead of other people imposing their beliefs on me. It's like, no, I start with my heart and what feels true for me. And then the options become more available. Really, the work that I do with clients as well is just like, let's just have a conversation. Let's put aside all these shoulds and shouldn'ts. Let's like
Mm.
what feels true for you today, and let's move forward from there, and then we can kind of experiment, right? That n equals one experiment of let's try this, see what happens. How does it feel? Okay, that worked, great, keep doing it. Or this didn't work, and so we tweak and modify it, right? And so yeah, I think from that place we can create a much more sustainable um, uh, approach.
I love all this. And I like the word, John, you use like archetype. And, you know, everyone's n equals one. So some of what I'm about to say, very prominent in a significant, if not most, female clients as well. But this whole attitude, there's something called hustle culture and no pain, no gain. And if anything in my coaching, like, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to do a 5-day fast and then another 5-day fast
Hey,
and another 5-day fast. And the amount of people that I've seen, men or women, succeed that way, 0.00000%, especially because in the modern world at all weights, and you guys might find this fascinating, actually, as BMI goes up, as a general, of course, there will be exceptions, nutrient deficiencies go up. So you have a 200, 300-pound client, they're going to make the mistake that they're flooded with nutrients, but actually, the average 300-pound person has more nutrient deficiencies because of the modern diet. So it's literally fat without nutrients. You start fasting somebody with no nutrients, what's going to happen? Their body's going to shut down. They might be able to willpower it for a couple weeks, a couple months. I'm like, I saw this anytime. I'm thinking like, all right, Mr. or Mrs. 5-a-day faster. I'll see you in a few months and let's see how it's going. So the no pain, no gain recovery as important as stress. Stress is hormetic stress. There's something called the hormetic stress curve. And I would teach all my clients, you probably saw me on community meetings. I was hormetic stress, hormetic stress. You get positive returns, then you're fasting or whatever, exercising more, but you're not actually getting better. And then you start getting diminishing returns, even the negative returns. So I had to teach a lot of Taoist flowing concepts to a lot of my male clients and also with female clients. But I found so many male clients just crush it like you would not believe, not going longer than 24-hour fastings fast. So much so they were losing like 3 to 5 pounds a week once they became fat adapted. Once they became fat adapted, I would always encourage way of eating change, a way of eating they love that loved them back. And then I would also, here's a book called Primal Endurance, Primal Endurance. I would also teach them how less strenuous exercise, especially zone 2 jogging or walking, brief periods of strength training, whether and not doing like the yellow zone, orange theory type of, dopamine hit. And so there's a quote by Bruce Lee, the less effort, the quicker and more powerful we would be. So for a lot of men, I'm like, actually less effort, but wise effort based on how our bodies actually feel secure to let go of body fat worked. And I also, for all my clients, but especially males, I said, F the scale, F weight loss. I don't even want to talk about weight loss. I want to talk about these new enjoyable lifestyle practices. Screw the F in scale. Trust me, like focus. When I did the weight loss seminars, I would always say this, John. I would say the first rule of weight loss, the first rule of Fight Club is to forget all about weight loss and focus on our practices. And to your point, what is success? If somebody only loses 10 pounds but reverses their type 2 GERD, sleep apnea, and medical and has a little jiggly, lower belly, which is our, nature's, I know so many people with six packs that are sick as dogs. Sorry, that's a bad term. Totally sick. Totally sick. I'd rather have a jiggly lower belly and be the epitome of health. So, kind of that reconceptualizing of no more efforts just being a dunderhead. You don't have to suffer to heal. Doing the wrong type of exercise. So that was common with my male clients, but not uncommon among my female as well.
yeah, well, what you said, you don't have to lose all the if weight loss is the reason that you're making the changes. You don't have to lose all the weight to get healthier and to feel better. You can reverse your insulin resistance and still be obese.
Yeah. And also, wanting to look good or be functional. I don't know if you also played sports, but I love tennis and pickup basketball, and I want to play those at 60 and 61. I love dancing. I love movement. So I say the scale is like a bank account. Like it might feel good to have another zero, right? That would be 10 times the money. But it's really, is it the money or the quality of life and the freedom? So thinking of it as quality of life rather than a number on the scale or even looking a certain way. If we are playful and artistic and love our way of eating that's also healing us, then the scale will take care of itself. It just will. It's a derivative from this flowing healing process.
And isn't feeling good or feeling better the main objective anyway? Not the number on the scale, which is, in our society, it's so easy to just get wrapped up in that. The
The
size,
functional
the
body.
size, the number on the scale, the number on your ketone meter, yeah. Well, it gets like almost like a little bit of a competition. But there's that indoctrination, this is how it's supposed to be.
No idea. Apparently, unknown to me, my computer takes phone calls now. So we're,
I had the same thing happen to me yesterday, so I know what that's like. No worries.
yeah.
Uh, I just picking up from where we left off, I something stood out to me in what you said, Larry, if we don't have to suffer in order to heal or lose weight. I'm kind of curious for the two of you, how you work with clients and communicate this to them, because it feels so pervasive that, like, to make progress, to move forward in like weight loss or even like many other things in life, that it has to be hard and that we have to struggle in order to achieve that outcome. Yet what I'm hearing from both of you really in like what your journeys, and um it doesn't have to be that way. There can be this like natural, organic way that actually is maybe pleasant at times and still losing weight. It doesn't always have to be suffering and a struggle. So yeah, I'm kind of curious if you can elaborate more on how you work with clients and communicating that.
How about having some food freedom, and just tone down the food noise so you're not constantly obsessed with
And
trying to
speaking of,
trying to pass the drive-through or the 7-Eleven or the Tim Hortons or whatever and not turn in. Just little things like that.
yeah, I love the little things approach and setting up your environment. Speaking of Dr. Fung, I do like to share with clients if people look up the Women's Health Initiative and because it shows, it's funny you mentioned that. Cameron and I have a deep appreciation for Eastern wisdom. And there's a concept in Taoism called Wu, W-E-I, and I probably butchered the name, but it's mistranslated as no action, and it's literally effortless or aligned action. And this came up all the time, this, less is more, especially in the weight loss class. And how I explained it to either in the class or clients, your body needs to feel secure in
Mhm.
order to lose weight. So meals with nutrients makes the body feel secure. So I would say the most important part of fasting is eating, or I would say the only thing better than fasting is eating. And the only thing better than eating is fasting. The only thing better than exercise is rest. The only thing better than rest is exercise. These things need to, and actually, and if I sound like Mr. Miyagi or Bruce Lee, well, guess what, guys? The universe is a Bruce Lee universe. Taoism is literally the way. Taoism is the structure of the universe. So, I can sound like I'll say Bruce Lee, not Mr. Miyagi, but both of us are just conveying the truth. In order for fasting to work, we must eat. In order for exercise to work, we must rest. In order to be a whole human being, we must have both divine feminine and divine masculine. It's just the nature of things. But I would focus on that food as signifying security, and then the body sheds all this weight. And that's why I found often most of my clients, I was reducing their fasting because they were like, fasting, and they were actually over fasting. They were going past that hermetic curve, or men over exercising. So, at least to me, Cameron, that phrase of we want to make our bodies secure, which would be the rest if I had an over exercising male, or if I had an over fasting male or female. We could even, some people were going to keto. Keto just wasn't right for them. You know, women of still childbearing age, you know, keto's not for every woman. It's not for every man, especially, active males. I found no grains to be the key because once you're no grain, you're like almost always spontaneously under 100 grams of carbs.
Mhm.
You can have sweet potatoes and stuff. So I privileged, and I found most of my clients overall did really well with primal, which is no grains. And that also is an easy button for, it was Sally, right? For Sally's cupcakes or whatever. Me and Kaylin found that we didn't have to go through the process of negotiation, because literally, I will tell you, 98 to 100% of items in a break room have grains. So if you're no grain, then you don't have to waste the mental energy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love this idea about like the counterbalance, exercise and rest and eating, not eating. There's always that balance, and it's in negotiating how much of each, but
Fed
it
state,
can't be.
fasted state.
Yep. Yep. You want to, and when you're fasting, you want to fast well. And when you're eating, you want to eat well. Be present as much as possible. And I'm talking to myself, I'm still a work in progress. When you're exercising, you want to exercise well and be joyful. When you're resting, you want to find joy in the resting. So, um, Mr. Miyagi's Guide to Healing and Weight Loss. That's probably, there'd be copyright issues there. So we won't.
And yeah, I see you finding Larry's way as well. Larry's
Yeah,
way.
oh my gosh, oh yeah, we are over an hour now. So many, I think what I've also used this phrase, and it really drives me, John. I know it drives you, Cameron. Smarter, not harder. And as much as we can be guides, that it's not more effort, it's wise effort. So that word wisdom and information are very, very, very different. That would be the quality between a relationship based on exploitation and one based on love. Wisdom is love, information is often exploitation. And there's a saying that the world is drowning in information while starving for wisdom. And you, your obesity for since young, John, you healed thyself, and that's what makes a healer. Cameron, the cancer and who am I? Me understanding the genetic model, and you know drugs were not the solution, and then so the double healing journey for me. Embodied healing imparts wisdom. And then I think for all of us, what I love about all three of our approaches is we're not telling any of our clients to do anything. We're truly helping them explore themselves. And I call it giving suggestions. Like when I have my free get to know, I say, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna hold space for you, I'm gonna see you healed, and I'm gonna give some suggestions and the whys for my suggestions. And that's my coaching method.
Well, yeah, the client's the one who's in charge, As a coach, we're supposed to help the client set their goals, not my goals, their goals, what works for them, and to find the obstacles that might get in the way and come up with strategies to deal with those. And then, our roles that we've had in the last few years, we also have that educator piece too, which is different from coaching. The education, it's like, well, here's why you might want to choose this food instead of that food or this combination or whatever it might be. But yeah, we're like the, what is it, sensei?
Mr. Miyagi's.
There you go. You just have to change the Miyagi spelling.
One word difference, underscore. Cameron, parting wisdom, not information, wisdom.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, to continue on your beautiful thought there of imparting wisdom and it being a lived experience and embodiment uh, of information. So I just continue to encourage people to have the courage to sit with themselves, to actually
Mm,
have that conversation of like, what does this body need? And how
mm,
to move through life in order to compassionately meet my needs and
mm.
respectfully meet my needs, right? So it's yeah, the two things are the courage to sit with thyself and then also to move forward and meet those needs in a kind and respectful way for myself, but also those around me,
Yes,
right? And that I think in that dialogue, that's where the deepest wisdom comes from. Because yeah, for a long time I was concerned about caring and respecting everyone else, but then I forgot about myself.
mm,
I'm like negotiating, oh, what do I need? But also, how do I communicate my needs in a way that's respectful to other people? And it's not always easy to do that. And there's like confrontation and conflict that I have to navigate and have a voice
mm.
to go there. So yeah, I say all these things and I feel like the strength has come from each of you sharing your stories as well of like I hope our conversation and people listening to what we've gone through that it gives them that strength and the courage to move on their own path and find their way.
Absolutely. And, healing with the diamonds is about families, and you were bringing other people. And there's an article I wrote for Diet Doctor that got a lot of traction. LCHF is the greatest gift we can give to ourselves and others. And as you were mentioning that the modern diet isn't very good for mental health, John. So healing is an act of self love, but it's also an act of love for all our loved ones. Like you're mentioning that you're going to meet your daughter. Had you not gone on this journey, she might have to not be doing her things, but taking care of you now. So the act of healing is actually a love gift to everyone on Gaia, really. I know quantum entanglement, we're all entangled with all other living things in the universe. So when I heal, John, I help heal everyone on the planet, even if they've never heard of me. Likewise, you guys as well. So, I mean, that's a mic drop if there ever is one. But yeah, you can do anything and everything you want to do with your daughter, and she's not taking care of you now. How fantastic is that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And she is now
Yes.
10 years into her career as she got her degree in public health, and she works with people and food. And today she has something called a spring market, and she's got people from organic farms and what am I looking for? Real food approaches. That's what she does with her hands every day, preparing food for people and teaching them how to create their
Oh,
own food. So yeah, I'm going to tell her that, Larry, when I see her shortly. Yeah, she made a
yeah,
huge
play
change in my
some
life. She does not
one-on-one
have to.
basketball. Challenge her to some one-on-one. No, I don't.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
One other thing I wanted to say, just probably the last thing for me today is you've all heard the saying. I first learned it in 12 steps a long time ago. It's like progress, not perfection. It's so easy to, oh, I'm never going to get this keto thing. I'm never going to get this low carb. I'm never going to get this fasting. I'm never going to get whatever it is and not try. But it's, maybe it's two steps forward, one step back. And then 5 steps forward, 1 step back. 10 steps forward, 1 step back. Because we do have to change who we are sometimes. We have to change our identity. My identity used to be that fat person that just sat in a recliner watching TV, eating all the crap every night. That's not my identity anymore. I'm a normal sized man now.
You
Body
are,
wise, not
and
up here all the time, but
if you're looking for somebody to take care of your pets on vacation, John is the guy. There's no, he's magic with dogs and cats. um, Gosh, I could talk to you guys for hours. We could do a weekly podcast, but thank you so much for sharing your being, your souls with me today and each other and listeners. I didn't know namaste, like I'm like figuring out non-duality, and I never even heard the word non-duality. So I started telling people, thank you for being you. And then I asked my wife, what does namaste actually mean? And it's roughly the same concept. So just like I was fasting without knowing, it's thank you guys for being you.
well, thank you for setting this up, Larry. And yeah, we'll have to do it again. Good seeing you, Cameron. I don't think I've seen you in person since, like, I think it was Keto Fest, like 2018.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's been
What
a
it
while.
it has been, absolutely. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure to have this space together and to share.
Yeah. And, maybe we'll have to meet in a central location in person one of these days. I mean, this is great, but I love to actually see you guys again. I've invited Cameron to Texas. It's warm. John, you know where we are,
Mm-hmm.
just a bit north of Austin.
Round Rock.
Yep. Thank you
Gentlemen,
guys.
aloha and mahalo. I'm flying to
Mahalo.
Honolulu tomorrow, so it's on my mind.
Oh,
Amazing. Take
all right.
care.
Take care.
Bye.